This is your class live for your poetry analysis project. It's pretty short. I think the requirement is only 250 words, but I do want you to take this seriously, and it is a good opportunity for you to practice your analysis skills. The assignment asks you to choose two of the poems that you've read and write a 250-word essay that compares and contrasts the two poems. Make sure you include at least two of the following to support your thesis: tone, point of view, literary devices, and meter. So you know you're going to be talking about at least two poems and at least two of those literary devices, or I guess literary terms. These are the poems that we've covered thus far that you can use for your analysis. Tell Me, O Swan, Your Ancient Tale by Kabir, The Swan by Rilke, Spanish Dancer by Rilke, Your Laughter by Neruda, Your Birthplace by Scheherazade, It's This Way by Hikmet, In Counting Small Bone Bodies by Bly. In case you need some help or review, I did a class live a bit ago about Kabir and Rilke and Neruda covering their poetry. So if you need a little help with understanding those poems or some extra background information before writing this essay, I would highly recommend that you access that video. It is available on my class live schedule. So when writing this essay, there are two ways I think that you can format this really easily into a 4-paragraph essay, where you just have an introduction, discuss the first poem and its features, discuss the second poem and its features, and then your conclusion. Or you can do it the opposite way, which is to have an introduction, discuss the features. So in this case, if you were talking about tone, you would talk about tone in 2 of the poems, and then maybe meter in 2 of the poems, and then have your conclusion. So you do have a couple of options here. Whichever one you prefer is up to you. Just make sure that you are taking time to analyze and compare. I think the second option lends itself a little bit more to comparison, but again, that's your call. It's completely up to you. A reminder about the items that you need to write about: tone, point of view, literary devices, and meter. Some of the literary devices that we're talking about here are things like simile, metaphor, personification, allegory, those types of things. So literary devices is a little bit more inclusive. There's a lot more to talk about, but I don't want to discourage you from discussing literary devices because they can be incredibly effective when discussing and comparing types of poetry. For your thesis, it's going to start out pretty simple. You know, what am I saying about these 2 poems? You know, you are comparing, again, tone, point of view, literary devices, and meters. So how will these things prove your thesis? What is it you're trying to say? You know, you might compare just Rilke's 2 poems, Spanish Dancer to The Swan, and just talk about how they're different. Even though they're by the same author, they're still distinctly different, but they also have some interesting similarities. That could be a simple essay to write, and you could talk about form and structure in Neruda's poetry and how that compares to Kabir. So you do have some options. Again, make sure your thesis is something arguable and provable. Your thesis is something you need to be able to prove with those features that you will be discussing. So it can't just be a statement of fact. These are poems. Well, I can't really argue with you. They are poems. It needs to have some sort of opinion-based message, something that's arguable. Again, some final touches when you're writing this essay. I can't say enough that when you write for an assignment, you need to ask yourself, does what I'm writing reflect my understanding? Your writing should prove your knowledge. If it doesn't, then you should take time and rewrite it. You need to prove to your teacher that you understand the concepts, you understand those features, tone, point of view, literary devices, meter, you understand the poetry, and you understand how to write an analysis. If you can't fulfill those things, then you need to do some rewriting. I'm more than happy to edit and revise your paper with you or for you and send it back to you. I don't have a problem with that. And reach out if you need help. Analysis isn't always easy, especially when it comes to poetry. But again, you need to make sure that you're proving your knowledge. If you do research, make sure that you cite your sources. I will ask for a works cited page if you do include research and citing sources and that sort of thing. Try to include quotes from each poem, because you should be able to give distinct examples from your poem. If you're talking about the tone or point of view of a poem, you should include quotes that demonstrate tone or point of view. And this proves your point. So when it comes time to rewriting your essay, you should have some form of evidence. So again, if you're talking about the poem and its features, if you want to talk about tone, you need to find direct quotes from the poem that you're discussing that prove its tone and prove your thesis correct. The same goes for if you're just talking about literary devices as your feature. You need to be able to list them and find them from each poem and put them in quotation marks and say, these are metaphors that are used in Spanish Dancer and Small Bones Bodies, and this is what makes them very similar. Another really simple way to do this is to talk about a feature that makes them similar and a feature that makes them different. That's a really simple way to add analysis into this essay. Again, if you have questions or concerns, let me know. Again, it's a short 250 words. I do want to make sure you write it in paragraphs. I do want to make sure that it looks neat and clean and professional. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will be seeing you in class.